Okay, call the meeting to order for the regular meeting April 27, 2015. With regards to the agenda, I propose to add an item 5D, resignation of Councillor Milbank. Any other additions or deletions? Okay, hearing none. Hearing a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Scott, seconded by... Thank you, Councillor Savage. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Adoption of minutes, April 20th, 2015.
So moved.
Councillor Scott is presented, seconded by Councillor Coulson. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Presentations. Lenora Lee, KPMG Audit Year-End Findings Report in District of Lancefield 2014 Financial Statements.
Thanks for having me at tonight's meeting. My name is Lenora Lee. I'm a partner with KPMG, responsible for the audit of the District of Lancefield. I just wanted to take you through the highlights of our audit and the findings as presented in our audit findings report. The status of the audit is substantially complete. The items that are outstanding are regular items that are outstanding at this point in time, which include obtaining the signed representation letter, which we did receive tonight, as well as obtaining approval on the financial statements by Council. The draft auditor's reports include 3 audit opinions, one on the financial statements, which indicate that the financial statements are prepared accurately and have no material misstatements included. It is a clean, unqualified audit opinion. We also provide audit opinions on 2 compliance matters: school tax, that the appropriate amounts have been collected and remitted in accordance with provincial legislation, as well as homeowner grants, that the appropriate amounts have been claimed and remitted against school tax collections. As well, both those reports are clean and unqualified, indicating that there's no reservations or no material issues outstanding. On page 3 of our report, we provide some information as to the scope of our audit, as well as materiality and highlights of our audit procedures. Materiality represents the quantitative amount by which the financial statements could be in error prior to having an impact on our audit opinion. That's a cumulative amount that we evaluate at the conclusion of all of our audit procedures, and it represents the accumulation of all potential errors in the financial statements. In terms of our reporting threshold to Council, we would report to you any audit differences individually that are greater than $4,000. So those 2 values are noted here in our report. And in terms of relative size in accordance with audit standards, we're typically provided with a range between 0.5 and 3% of a benchmark to determine materiality. And we've established that benchmark to be total expenses of the district, and our percentage threshold to be approximately 2%. So that reflects the low-risk nature of our audit and the history of few adjustments that have arisen as part of the audit process, and in previous years, no bias or fraud issues that have been noted. In terms of our audit procedures, we have also provided a summary at the bottom of page 3 there. It is primarily substantive based, meaning that we look to source documentation, invoices, cash receipts, and such to support the transactions that have been recorded during the year. We also review control procedures, oversight over the budget, establishment and monitoring, as well as payroll procedures, authorization, and disbursements. In the areas where we evaluated controls, we didn't note any significant control deficiencies or areas that caused any concern as part of our audit process. On page 4, we begin our discussion of any significant audit, accounting, and reporting matters. And the items that we bring forward here are generally those that are either non-recurring or one-time transactions, or potentially include significant judgment or estimates involved in valuation in the financial statements. The first matter discussed here relates to simply a timing item, the purchase of the fire truck, which contract was signed during fiscal 2013, and during 2014 was in the process of being constructed and delivered. Full delivery of that fire truck did not occur until fiscal 2015. And so as part of our audit, we evaluated whether or not there was a liability due during the 2014 year in regards to that fire truck purchase. In terms of reviewing the contract, we did note that full obligation does not transfer to the district until receipt and acceptance of the fire truck. And as a result, there was no liability reported for the final installment balance of $235,000 at the end of 2014. That amount has been fully paid in 2015 upon receipt and acceptance of that fire truck. There were no adjustments or other proposals related to that particular matter. The payment outstanding was included in reserves at the end of the year. As well, there was disclosure of the outstanding payment and commitment in the notes to the financial statements. On page 5, we've included some discussion over the vacation and sick leave accruals in the financial statements. For 2014, the balance was approximately $96,000. Most of that relates to sick leave. And there's a bit of an inverse relationship here between what you might expect the balance to be and sick leave taken. So as employees are healthier and do not take as much sick leave, that liability actually increases because the future entitlement is higher as the utilization is lower. So the amount that's being accrued here does have a certain number of assumptions attached to it, primarily around the discount rate, projected salary increases, and the amount of usage that will be taken in future years. We did review each of those assumptions, also in comparison to other local governments of similar size. As well, we reperformed the calculations involved in terms of days allocated, rates to determine the final liability accrual. As well, we also reviewed any limits to sick leave accrual to the extent that it's capped. We did note that the appropriate maximum threshold was applied in all situations. Again, we didn't note any adjustments related to the accruals that had been recorded in the 2014 statements for sick leave or vacation. As a future accounting matter, we spoke briefly about this last year. There is a new accounting standard that will be in place for the 2015 fiscal year, and that relates to liabilities for contaminated sites. In situations where the district has assets that are not currently in use or considered surplus, there is an evaluation that's required to determine if there's any potential contamination or future obligations to remediate those sites, as well as an evaluation of whether or not the district accepts responsibility for any remediation and whether the future costs are measurable. If those conditions are met, there is a requirement to record a liability or a current cost for future work that will take place. Of interest or of note, we had discussed briefly, underground abandoned mine shafts that are potentially in place in the district, as well any abandoned gas tanks or underground dry cleaning facilities. Those are typically the items and areas that are discussed with respect to this section. And management has taken some initial steps to perform some evaluations on whether or not those types of liabilities exist. Also, this section takes into consideration issues such as the concept of polluter pay to the extent that that liability is the responsibility of a third party or the initiator of the initial contamination. In those situations, the district will not have accepted responsibility for cleanup, and as such, the liability would not be recorded in the district's financial statements. On page 6, we've just brought forward a matter that was introduced last year, and it relates to developer-donated capital assets. Oftentimes in the local government world, we see that there are donated assets when subdivisions or developments take place. And at times, because there's no cash exchange related to those transactions, the asset may not always make it into the financial statements or be recorded in the financial statements. And so we had discussed this topic last year, particularly with the introduction of a new role, just to ensure that there was open communication internally and that the appropriate donations were being reflected in the financial records. No issues noted in 2014 in that there was no developer contributions or development that had taken place. But this continues to be an area that management monitors to determine that the accounts are complete and that all donations have been appropriately recorded in these financial statements. On page 7, we've noted that during the course of the audit, there was no corrected or uncorrected adjustments that arose as part of our audit procedures. And so we would report, as mentioned to you, any adjustments over $4,000 that were noted as part of the audit, and there were none. And I think that does speak quite highly to the strength of the financial statements and the preparation of the day-to-day transactions and records. A clean opinion here is a rarity in local government. So we thank management and council for your oversight in that regard. On page 8, control deficiencies is a required area of communication for us as auditors, to the extent that during the course of our audit procedures we note any significant or material control deficiencies. We're required to report those to you, and we did not note any matters to bring to your attention in that regard. Lastly are the appendices to our report. A draft of the auditor's opinion is included, which will be attached to the financial statements once approved. And as mentioned, this is a clean audit opinion, which indicates there's no material errors in the financial statements. A copy of the representation letter is attached, which we've now received signed, and it indicates that we've received all the information, essentially, that we need to in order to complete our audit. And all of the disclosures in this letter are standard. There were no special adjustments that were made for the district. Our audit quality framework is attached to our report, which provides some information as to the controls that we have internally to ensure that quality is the foundation of all of our audit procedures, and that is not compromised during the course of any audit work that we perform or any professional engagements that we're a part of. Lastly are the current developments, and this section primarily relates to any future accounting standards to bring to your attention. As well, we have indicated a short summary of cybersecurity topics for discussion. With increasing access points to information and financial matters, it is quite a hot topic in the public sector at the moment that many organizations are reviewing and incorporating into business continuity plans some discussion of cybersecurity and controls over information. In terms of the future accounting standards, I've mentioned the standard that becomes effective next year related to contaminated sites. And the last two noted on page 18 relate to changes that would be effective for the 2017 fiscal year. And those relate to financial instruments and foreign currency translation. Those two standards, at this point, will likely have limited applicability to the district, but what they involve is pulling out temporary market changes and including those in a separate statement rather than having temporary changes such as foreign exchange or gains, investment gains or losses recorded in annual surplus. So at this point in time, the investments of the district include primarily money market funds and short-term investments that would have limited unrealized gains or losses. Again, we will work with the district leading up to 2017 to ensure that that standard is reviewed and we have the appropriate documentation in place to ensure that transition occurs smoothly. Those are the highlights of our audit findings report. Again, just like to thank Council and management for the attention given to the audit. And again, it was a very clean and smooth year for us. So very, very good effort in that regard.
Any questions, comments from Council? Councillor Scott.
Just in regards to the contaminated sites, you mentioned coal mines.
Yes.
And I don't know if you can ask the question or not. Would they not be the responsibility of the province?
There's been some neighboring communities that have had similar questions, and they've referred that question to legal counsel.
Okay.
And I believe the response has been no to date, that the province has not accepted responsibility for that potential contamination or liability either. And most have approached it when the incident occurs. That the negotiations and discussions around cost would take place at that point in time.
Councillor Carson.
So further to that, if I can, I see on page 17 it mentions that this happens in the 2015 fiscal year for us. So at what point do you have to identify the liability? Like how quickly are the jurisdictional issues being addressed?
The standard is applied on a retroactive basis. So the measurement date for any liabilities would actually be January 1st, 2013. So any known instances of contamination that the district accepts responsibility for at that point in time would be a reduction in the accumulated surplus and a liability.
Okay.
And going forward then, adjustments would take place for any new instances or occurrences would be an expense of the district, or any adjustments to the initial estimate or valuation of those determined in 2013 would also flow through the income statement.
Okay. I'm sorry, further with that, I think you made mention that management has taken preliminary steps to review that?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have had a number of discussions during the year, as well as a little bit more during the course of the audit, to determine which assets, is there an inventory of assets that are not in productive use, as well as just having some of these discussions around what about coal mines, what about dry cleaners, has some preliminary inventorying of those procedures been performed, which it has. Also during the course of the year, we hold a number of, we call them share forums, amongst a number of local governments for them to come together to discuss issues or areas of discussion that they've been seeing as they progress with this project. Measurement type discussions, valuation, the liability type discussion. So management's been part of all of those as well.
Okay. Sorry, last one. I don't know if this is the right time then. I don't know if this is something that I just haven't seen in my travels, or
What's that?
this list that was mentioned, or inventory of potential liabilities. Am I able to ask staff for some details on that now, or should that be for a different time forum?
Well, you can ask staff that probably don't have it at hand, but you can ask.
Okay. Is any details of that preliminary list, and or how's the process unfolding?
Yeah, so we've been using our tangible capital asset listing, and essentially have concluded at this time there isn't any obvious contaminated sites. However, in working with other municipalities that have the mine shaft issue, we've been sharing information as we go forward, because there's been quite a lot of discussion on who's responsible, is it contaminated, is it the property owner's responsibility. So the district, as you know, doesn't have a lot of land of its own, and so our tangible capital asset listing was sufficient in terms of reviewing for those initial steps, and then sharing with communities such as Nanaimo and Esquimalt that also have this mine shaft issue. So it's really everybody kind of moving forward together on this as we consider this standard and the development of a policy around it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Scott?
I just want to say thank you to staff. I think it's great that we have a fully clean audit report. Congratulations.
If I could kind of ask about the contaminated site part, now it wouldn't just be mine shafts, would it also include tailings and things like that that have been dumped over the years?
Yeah, it includes all of those types of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking some road ends and things like that where there's been buildup along the foreshore
Yeah.
over the years. So, yeah. Okay. Anything else from council? Councillor
I
Casale.
just mirroring what Councillor Scott said about staff compliments. It's obvious that staff have done a good job of managing the district's finances over the last period.
Any further? Okay. Thank you, and do note later in the agenda is the approval of the financial statements themselves.
Skiing.
So is it going to flip over?
It's coming.
So the next part of the agenda is just the presentation of the 5-year financial plan, the proposed financial plan. There we go. Water bottle. Okay. So in terms of what makes up the financial plan, we've got input from a variety of areas, including council direction, core service levels and maintenance of those. The collective agreement drives part of the financial plan, as well as the capital asset maintenance and replacement plans with regards to reserves as well as expenditures during a period. Community input, which is part of this evening as well. And then from that standpoint, that creates the overall financial plan for the next 5 years. The taxation side determined with regards to tax rates set in conjunction with the budget and the tax rates bylaw by council. The property assessments, how those taxes end up being distributed through the community to individual property owners based on assessment is dealt with through the BC Assessment Authority. So in terms of individual properties and the effect on individual properties, council doesn't have a role in that. It's done through the province. And then in terms of the financial planning process, there's the aspect of maintaining the current service delivery as well as implementing any strategic directions of council that are set as part of our policies from year to year. In terms of Landsville itself, very, very small in terms of commercial and industrial base as well as other, which would include utilities. And then over there we get the residential standpoint. So any impact at all typically comes down on the residential. Any big change at all in the commercial and industrial base isn't going to have any major effect on reducing or increasing the residential side. In terms of the overall tax bill, Landsville collects about 33% of your existing tax bill itself. The rest gets distributed out, with the RDN being 12%, school district being a major portion at 41%. And then some smaller areas there, including the provincial side, being the BC Assessment Authority. The regional library is another area, about, I think I calculated it out somewhere around $44 per resident, I believe is what it worked out to. And then policing is also a part of it. Because we're under 5,000, we don't separately pay for policing, but it is part of our overall tax bill. With regards to the revenue side, the property tax aspect is property taxes on the residences as well as amounts collected from utilities. So that's the 1.6 million or 32%. We also have the in and outs with regards to reserves. So when we take monies out of reserves, it forms part of our revenues. The parcel taxes, which would include things like Narston Creek, sewer parcel taxes and water parcel taxes, is 14%. And then we have the user fees themselves, so based on your water usage, and that would also affect your sewer usage fees from that standpoint. And then we have government grants, $658,000. The government grant side comes from small communities grant as well as gas tax monies. When it comes to the property tax side, it's projected a 2% increase. In terms of the general tax levy, which doesn't include the utilities, is $1.5 million. And then a 1% tax increase is still roughly about $15,000. The parcel tax, the solid waste has been decreased. That comes through the RDN side. The Narcy Creek overflow and the sanitary sewer collection system are parcel taxes set with the implementation of those areas. And then the water, there was increases to the water rates, or the water parcel taxes going back from 2012 projected through to 2015. So the last increase here going to $355 from $325 in 2014. The user fees, minimum consumption rate is staying at $62. The sewer side, one of the big changes at the regional district is going to secondary treatment with regards to the regional district sewer treatment system. So that's increases $750 a quarter from prior years to fund those operating costs as well as those additional treatment costs from the RDN. The Small Community Protection Grant, typically it's $440,000 per year. This year it's going to be $459,000, but it's going to be less in the following year. So the $19,000 advance is going to be put into a reserve and will come into revenue in 2016. So from that standpoint, the 2016 is going to be $421,000, but with the additional amount of the 19, it'll come up to the $440,000. So it's just a timing issue there. The Community Works Fund, there's approximately just under $200,000 collected each year. In terms of it, it's been put away. There's $920,000 approximately at the end of the year that's been put away as a reserve for future years. The $195,000 as it comes in there, we put in there as well. There's an accounting change that's occurring in 2015, so presentation-wise, it'll show up as revenue and then put into a reserve, whereas in the past, it just went directly into reserves. So in terms of our expenditures, the capital expenditures is the big one at 26%. Reserve contributions, 21%, and then the general government being 18%. The other ones working out in terms of the various services, so they range from the protective services side, 6%, waterworks 6%, and then the solid waste and transportation services totaling another 10%. That should be changes from 2014. Council's reduced the convention expenses, so we've dropped that by $10,000. Legal fees projected to be decreased by $7,000. We are hit by the hydro cost increase of 28% over 4 years or 5 years. The Wellfield Management Plan, which was something that was originally budgeted in 2014 for the second stage, is actually occurring in 2015, so that's a carryover in terms of our surplus being used for that. Treatment costs from the wastewater side from RDN, the operating costs of the Nanaimo Pollution Control Center, and then fire service review recognizing the pending retirement of Chief Whips. It's approximately $6,000. And then some other fire department amounts, that says $4,400 underneath the sunshine there. And the asset management initiatives, recognizing we've applied for provincial federal grants, one of the requirements is for us to have an asset management plan in place. Implementation of that will cost approximately $10,000, but we expect to get a $5,000 grant to help offset 50% of those costs. One-time projects and items coming out of the strategic planning initiative that Council had earlier this year. The respectful workplace training required by WorkSafe BC is $2,500, and that's going to be occurring the end of this month and the beginning of May. A use of a facilitator for the identification of the options and the next steps with regards to either the water agreement or other implementation measures of water. The public consultation regarding secondary suites was something, again, that was budgeted in the previous year. It's been carried forward as part of the surplus and expects to be done in 2015. There was an estimated budget of approximately $25,000 in order to provide audio and video streaming of council meetings and other social media initiatives. It's been identified as $25,000. Remains to be seen in terms of its implementation how much I was actually spent, but that's the amount from the initial quote from a service provider. An increase in the winter road maintenance reserve, recognizing the unpredictability of snow clearing. There was a reserve created in 2014. Some additional monies going into that, recognizing there was greater than average usage in 2014, so it's being increased to bolster that back up. Woodlot Trails and Mountain Skills Bike Skills Park are a couple of initiatives coming out of the Parks and Recreation Commission side. So upgrades and maintenance with regards to trails on the Woodlot, currently operated by Gregson. And then in terms of Rotary Park, the identification and possible implementation of a mountain bike skills park within that area, as opposed to some of the equipment that's there now. The capital expenditure side, these come out of capital reserves. The Public Works Department has some projects there, one of which is on the agenda tonight with regards to the water main replacement. So there's some initiatives. There's a culvert on Phantom Road at the very bottom low point there that's projected for replacement, as well as either repair or replacement of 4 streets in the district. The fire department, the final payment on the fire truck that was mentioned in the audit report will occur now that delivery has happened. Actually, I believe it has occurred. The check, I believe, has been sent off. The fire department is upgrading their equipment with regards to the latest technology for thermal imaging cameras. So that's $11,000 per camera. As well as Costin Hall has proposed some seismic and other upgrades. One of the things on council's agenda is to look at the future of those buildings prior to the expenditure of that money during this year. And then with regards to Parks and Rec, in addition to the mountain bike skills park, there's rotary playground equipment that's required to be replaced due to its condition and its age. And then there's also the plan to actually put the washroom in Huddlestone Park along with the electrical works there throughout the park for events. The sanitary sewer collection system, we have submitted the grant application for phase 3. The cost of the project overall is estimated to be $6.6 million, of which we're hoping to get 2/3 grant from that, and then the rest to be funded through a local area service, similar to our funding method that was in phase 1 and phase 2 of the sewer project. With regards to contributions, in terms of it, there's the $920,000 that's existing in gas tax funds, approximately $195,000 projected for this year to be added to that, as well as other amounts being contributed to the reserves based on the infrastructure, the planning that's been done in previous years, and then there's also additional amounts being contributed to upgrades or for reserves in waterworks and sewage collection. I know that was quick. Questions?
The slide where you're talking about expenditures for fire department stuff, there was a number for iPads.
Oh, the $4,400?
Yeah, how in the world does 3 iPads cost $4,400?
That includes the setup, etc., of the iPads themselves. There's a variety of programs in that the fire department's going to have implemented on there. So that includes that in the overall cost.
Budgeting for software.
Yeah, I think that like just the device itself is $400, something like that, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, but there's the other.
Yeah, then there was all the other things. Yeah.
Yeah.
The licensing and the plan was in there, but just in terms of the device itself.
Yeah.
Sort of that.
Okay. Additional questions? Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda. I'm not part of the audience anymore, Councilor Colson. Sat there for so long, it felt comfortable. Mr. Mark Fisher, Superintendent Officer in charge of the NMLR-CMP regarding policing for information. And we do have a sheet with clear colors on it.
Perfect. Colorful sheet. Thank you, Your Worship, members of Council. I have before you tonight the crime statistics for the first quarter of 2015. I'll speak to them very briefly. As you can see, there's been very little crime on the sheets. A couple of things that you may have questions about, I anticipate. One is the assaults, which there was 4 assaults in the zone that we capture as Landsville in our scoring and our mapping for the purposes of our computer program. 2 of those occurred on the News First Nation, but they're still captured under the land spill zone that we have. The other 2 were domestic disputes within the district of land spill. As far as the residences, one of the break-in enters, and really the only one that was significant as far as value and large value, was one that I spoke to you about in early January, the last time I was here. I think that happened 2 or 3 days ahead of that. There was another one where a bike and a trailer were stolen out of a shed. I know there was some media attention and I think some community fundraising as a result in regards to that, so a high-profile incident in the community. Thefts from vehicles, there were 3 during that time period, and not really confined to one area. A couple in the industrial area, one in another area that was an unlocked vehicle, and another that was a bag of clothing that was visible in one of the vehicles. So nothing that we can say as far as a specific trend in a certain area of the community that I think would cause concern in that regard. Last time I was here, I know that theft of vehicles had been a major concern for us, both in the city and in this area. That seems to have toned down somewhat, some of it, but we've noticed a significant decrease given a few of our favorite friends that are in custody. It's funny how that tends to make a difference from time to time. The other thing I wanted to discuss with you briefly while I was here tonight was policing priorities for the upcoming year. I know in the past year the things that we tried to focus on, aside from the crime stats and the calls for service that we attend, were predominantly traffic issues in the community, so traffic patrols and enforcement, and then obviously beach patrols in the summer. We're trying to get some members out, be it on bikes or on foot on the beaches in the evenings and the weekends. So in the absence of any other direction from you, that's where I'll encourage our officers to focus in their proactive time when they're out in the community of Lansville for the time being. But if you have other feelings on that and where you'd like us to focus our efforts, I'm definitely open to having a discussion on that as well, or entertaining any questions you may have about the stats you see before you.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, just a question on the motor vehicle side of things. I live in Upper Lansville and I hear from quite a few of my neighbors and I know you guys have been working on it, but the unlicensed ATVs and motorcycles. And I think the biggest issue that most people have with it, there are a few people that do go up the side of the street and they go up 10K or whatever, and nobody really cares about that. It's when people are doing 60, 70K, they're going way faster, double the speed of the vehicles. And you get ATVs that are going around corners and they're lifting wheels off the ground, and a kid or a dog or something is going to get hurt with that. So that's one thing that I see and I hear from people on a regular basis. It's a challenge, and I don't know how you totally control that. I mean, you have to be there at the right time.
You do. I mean, unless it's a resident that they know and recognize it.
They know what address is.
Then that's a different story, and we can deal with that reactively as opposed to proactively being out there at the time. This was an issue for us last summer as well. I know I spoke to council about at one point some of the things we tried to do to educate residents in particular area, Lorenzen Lane, in regards to the issue, but I know that it's also not just restricted to that area.
Yeah.
I think we'd be naive to think that that's the only area that this sort of thing happens in the district. The other challenge we have from time to time is we do try to set up in certain areas when we have time to see it. The one issue we're very cautious on with our members is a high-speed chase with a motorcycle. I mean, it's just it's reckless on the part of the driver, but it's also reckless for our officers at times. And balancing that risk of how often you do that if you don't have a plate. So in those cases, we try and get a plate. And then, obviously, instead of chasing the offender, we'll go back and deal with the register owner after the fact. If they have a plate on it, if they don't, then it's simply a description and talk to some neighbors and hope you can figure out who it is. But it presents difficulties from an enforcement perspective, not only on the timing of when we're there, but dealing with it when we're there as well. It's a challenge.
Thank you.
Councillor Hain?
Just under the B&E residential, are they confined to one area or throughout the community, given there's 3 this quarter?
Sure. We had one on the First Nation, one was on Saxon Cross, and one was on Owen.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Post?
2 things. Question. The numbers that are in the brackets, are those the codes for the descriptor?
Yes. So they are scoring codes. So when we do a search on our system to figure out the number of offenses, so we have a variety of weapons offenses. You'll see there's about 6 different numbers, and well, actually there's more than 6, probably 10. So So those are different types of weapons offenses.
Okay.
So if you were in a larger jurisdiction with more crime, you would see a variety of numbers under each of those that we could actually break it down into each type of weapons offense. Same goes for assaults. Assaults, there's about 6 different kinds. You can be talking about a common assault, which is a fight out on the street. That would encompass the assaults with a weapon or assaults causing serious harm. There's a variety of definitions of assault under the criminal code, and that's what it tries to capture in those numbers. So he puts them in the analyst that runs this report for us. It's a quick reminder for him to say, okay, these are the codes I'm going to search, and have some consistency in the numbers that he's looking at from quarter to quarter.
Okay. And the second thing, if I could put another plug-in for the speed on the roads. I think I mentioned this from here last time, but what surprised me, the traffic survey we had done showed 15 out of every 100 cars, this is just on Lancel Road here, were going over 55 kilometers an hour. And that
In a 30.
in a 30 zone, yeah. And it pertains to other main corridors through the town as well, but encouraging to see that curtailed a bit. I know you're doing what you can.
No, that's, as I said, when we come, we're looking for priorities, so that's it's good to hear the reinforcement on that.
Anything from council? I've got a couple of questions. The ATV side, as of June 1st, they're supposed to all be licensed.
Yes.
Do you have part in the enforcement of the non-licensed ones of those after June 1st?
Yeah.
Like not if they're on the road, but even if they're anywhere non-licensed? And the reason why I ask is, I talk to some ATVers and they go, well, I don't want to go through that hassle, I'm just not going to license it. They're not people that ride up and down the road.
No.
But they go out in the hinterlands and...
And again, it comes into a resourcing issue then. Are we going to throw a bunch of resources to chase people off in the bush, and what other priorities are we dealing with in the interim?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sit here and say, no, we're not going to touch it. But again, we have to balance, if we take people and dedicate them to doing that off-road.
Actually, it's not a case of dedication. I'm just wondering, do you have, like, for example, let's say they're into the road, they've got the trailer there, and they're loading up the trailer, and they've got a bunch of unlicensed ATVs.
Right.
Do you guys have the ability, for example, to ticket them for having unlicensed ATVs, even though they're not physically on the road?
We could look at it.
Okay.
Are we going to look at it in all seriousness?
No.
Probably not. With all the other competing priorities. If they're on the road, or if they're, if we get repeated reports and doing something reckless or with minors in the bush, then that's a different story.
Yeah.
Then obviously in the interest of public safety, we look at that. But I would hope with the other issues our officers are dealing with and have on their plate that I think the speed is here.
So the answer to
and
these
the
people
ATVs,
is yes, they could ticket you.
yes, that can be.
Okay. Good. That's,
Citizens arrest.
good luck with that. The other thing is with regards to fires on the beach. I'm meeting with some residents Wednesday who I know their issues are fires on the beach, and we're back to truckloads of pallets showing up on the beach, and the ability for us, number one, to monitor it, but number two, to enforce it somewhat can be a bit of a challenge. I think I know where the pallets are coming from. It's just whether or not we can get cooperation on the part of the business owners to put those in a place where they can't be just loaded up in a truck and taken down to the beach. So that's the only other concern that I have at this time is just the fires.
Yeah, well, that becomes an issue, especially with how dry it is already.
Yeah. So some of the road ends, like Sebastian Road, historically has been one of the places where younger people tend to take the load of pallets in and light her up. It kind of makes a bit of a mess on the beach. Yeah.
So no, the earliest we can find out about it, if people see them doing that.
Yeah.
Try and get some presence out there before they light it up, because I know as well the costs that are associated for the fire department in dealing with those issues.
Yeah, and not only that, all the nails and that come out of it onto the beach and trying to clean that up. It's a bit of a challenge. Okay. Any further from council? Kurt, thank you very much. Okay, on to correspondence. There's 4 pieces of correspondence, including item 5D. We decided to deal with separately. We can have a motion to receive all at once, motion to receive individually. Would like to
Prefer individually.
Okay. So the first one there, BC Water and Wastewater Association, 2015 report, February 2015 report.
Move receipt.
Move receipt, Councillor Hain, second by Councillor Scott. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Brian Blood, location of washroom building Huddlestone Park Civic Center properties. Councillor Savage. Move receipt by Councillor Savage, seconded by Councillor Scott. Discussion? Councillor Savage.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to Mr. Blood in the audience. I think Mr. Blood raises a good point. I don't know whether council or staff or Parks and Rec have determined exactly where the washroom is going to be at this point. I don't know, but I think we should give serious consideration to the placement. It could, I think Mr. Blood raises a very important point.
Okay. Any further? Councillor Scott?
Yeah, I was going to comment on the same thing. I guess part of the challenge with it is obviously if new buildings were going in, that could be incorporated right into the buildings, but we probably aren't right at this moment. But I think we have to look at the whole big picture, and whenever we do anything like this, we have to look at the larger picture, and what we're doing may be the right answer, but I think it's always good to question.
Councillor Coulson?
Touched on what Councillor Scott said. Just we spoke of it at a prior meeting, potentially reviewing the long-term vision with those buildings, and we won't necessarily solve it this year, but if we have scratched the surface on what might unfold there, and then this might play a part of how that unfolds.
Okay, any further discussion? Maybe just a question to staff. We saw in the financial plan the budget related to the washroom and electrical. Would there be an impact to that budgeted amount depending upon where that building is within the park?
Yeah, yes, it would actually. Staff got the pricing for the building to go just on the inside of the parking lot, just past the tree there. So basically, if it's going to go further into the park, then there's more costs associated with the water system and electrical and all
Okay. Councillor Hain?
Because the washroom's going to tie into the sewer system, correct?
That's
Which is running right behind that.
which is right at the parking lot.
Right, yeah.
Councillor Coulson?
Could it potentially avoid that drop, though, for the power pole if it was branched off of what's going to the church or something to that effect?
That would be a tough one because the church is actually would have to be upgraded. The hydro for the church would have to be upgraded, so then there would be a cost associated with that.
Well, no, actually, I'm going through it at a house right now. It's about $1,000 to go from 100 amp to 200 amp service, but then there's other infrastructure. So I know we can't answer it now, but I thought if it could avoid a $15,000 power pole drop, it's an opportunity.
Okay, any further? Okay, all those in favor of the motion received? Opposed? Motion carried. Drop Zone Vancouver Island Veterans Association, invitation for representative to attend the memorial ceremony May the 9th, 2015. Basically what it is an organization, not specifically the Lancefield Legion. It's intended to use the cenotaph for a memorial service on May the 9th, Saturday, May the 9th at 11 a.m. And in that regard they're also looking for a representative from the district as well. Councillor Coulson, you're looking at me.
No, I'm just...
Just for your information, I cannot attend. I'm teaching in Vancouver that day. Or, sorry, Victoria that day. So,
I'll move receipt.
by Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Savage. Discussion on the motion to receive. Councillor Hain?
So, sorry, are they looking for approval to use Huddlestone Park? Or?
No. Basically what it was is they, when it comes to Huddlestone Park, they were looking to use the cenotaph. We directed them, recognizing the cenotaph hadn't been turned over theoretically, to the Lancefield Legion side. From our standpoint, the park itself is open that day, and individuals are free to use the park as they see fit, and they've been notified as such in Trudy's letter there. So they're not asking permission. they are entitled to use the park itself through public access. Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to receive? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Councillor Scott, did you have something to follow that?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Next item, Councillor Milbank's letter of resignation. Copy in the green pages there. Councillor Scott?
Move receipt.
Move receipt. Seconded by Councillor Savage. Discussion. Councillor Scott.
Disappointed to see Councillor Milbank has chosen to resign.
Further discussion. Councillor Savage.
Yeah, disappointed to see a councillor resign so early in the term. And whether through you, we might ask staff to just give us some indication of the process now and potential timing for by-election.
So, Your Worship, legislation stipulates that as soon as practical after a vacancy occurs, local government must appoint a chief election officer. Once the chief election officer has been appointed, the election must fall on Saturday no later than 80 days after the date. So, the district is certainly in a position to wait receipt of that appointment until the return of the Director of Corporate Administration on her vacation. But once that appointment is made, you have 80 days to conduct the by-election.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Verbal updates, Mayor and Council. Councillor Savage.
Oh, thank you. I attended 2 City of Nanaimo Parks and Rec functions. The first one is an orientation for new commissioners or returning commissioners. I thought I'd pass some information on to the community. We do contribute towards Nanaimo significantly. Some of the issues that I'm going to mention, we don't contribute directly, but it's just general information. So the City of Nanaimo Parks and Rec budget is $20 million a year. Yeah, that's right. $20 million a year. It's the largest department in the city. They currently have $7.5 million in reserve. The department employs 130 seasonal and casual employees. There are 170 kilometers of trails in the City of Nanaimo, and 15% of the Nanaimo area is classed as open space. There are 90 neighborhood parks, 12 off-leash dog parks, and 85% of all park area is deemed as being open space. Annually, there are 500,000 visits to the aquatic facilities. And the city are in the process right now of partnering with several other communities to obtain some updated software to deal with registration, paying fees, that kind of stuff, that deals with credit cards and that kind of stuff. So they're partnering with communities, actually, most of them are on the Lower Mainland. In terms of the commission itself, we had the first meeting last week. 2 very significant potential, and I want to emphasize potential projects that could be happening. Both of them are private sector initiatives. One of them is a fundraising initiative for loaves and fishes, and it's termed as Glow in the Park. So this is going to be a light show. It's like a Christmas bush art garden event in Bowen Park. It's going to be an annual event. It'll run for about a month, and it won't be up and running this year. They're still in the planning stages, but it's deemed as being a major regional tourist attraction. So the second, there'll be gift shops and food and all that kind of stuff. The second interesting event is an organization has approached the city to start an annual triathlon event at Westwood Lake. This would be about 300 participants. Again, a big event. It's not so much a regional event. This is a West Coast event. There'll be participants from Washington, Oregon, BC. So the first event will be 2016, they hope, and it's anticipated it will be an annual event. So, sorry about the long report, but that's it. Okay.
Any questions for Councillor Savage? I got a couple. Sorry, Councillor Hain.
Is there any way I can get some of their Parks and Rec money?
Yeah, how about just 1 year's worth?
Just 1%.
Who are the Nanaimo councillors on the?
Ian Thorpe, we appointed Ian Thorpe as chair.
Okay.
Wendy Pratt as deputy chair.
Okay.
The new councillor, can't remember his name, guy's had a heart attack.
Gordon Fuller.
God Follett, and that's it, the three councillors here.
Okay.
There are 3 city councillors, 4 members at large, and 4 members like myself, and 1 from Extension, 1 from Gabriel, and 1 from Cedar. They're called members at large. So there's, did I count there? There's either 11 or 13 members of the commission. The commission is also broken down into subcommittees. The last term I was on the Parks Committee, and the Parks Committee get very much involved in, the city have a program called Volunteering Park Program, whereby if they've got an existing park with outdated or substandard equipment, they will partner with the local neighbourhood to go 50-50 on the cost. The city undertake the design. These are extremely successful projects. I just can't say enough about them. These are projects that there's one in my daughter's neighbourhood, just off Blueback, and it was about a $60,000 project. They put an asphalt track all the way around the park, new equipment, a water fountain, and it just brought the community together. It's a glue for the community when the community are involved in what happens in their park, and they actually contribute to the cost in terms of working kind. They're hugely successful, and hopefully sometime in the future, lots will make it to that point, because they certainly are, an excellent tool to bring community together and neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Councillor Savage. Councillor Hain.
Just one item, I attended the Foothills Town Hall meeting, excellently attended by the community, over 200 residents. I thought it was very well organized, very well co-facilitated by the mayor and Mark Holland. Nothing but I've heard but positive feedback. The 2 main issues are still there, water and traffic. So definitely a big concern on the minds of the residents. So it'll be interesting to see how we move forward with that.
Councillor Scott.
Likewise, I was at the Foothills meetings. I think most of the council was. I also, I had mentioned previously, I was a judge at the Vancouver Island Real Estate Board's Commercial Building Awards, and they had the presentations last week. The top prize overall went to a project in Vancouver. I encourage people, in Campbell River, if people have the opportunity to see it. It's a private company. They put a Class A office building downtown Campbell River. It's Broad Street Properties. They have rental apartment buildings across Western Canada. When we went up to look at the building, went inside to find out who rented the building, and they said it was their own building. They have 150 staff in the building. They operate out of Campbell River. The building looks like it could be on West Georgia in Vancouver. Absolutely spectacular. I had the opportunity to speak to the mayor of Campbell River on it, and it was very interesting. They worked collaboratively with the developer, and the city put in over $4 million in upgrades around the building, and it's roads on 2 sides. It's corner property, and it also has lanes on 2 sides, so it's essentially 4 sides all the way around. They replaced all the infrastructure, sewer, water, everything. Nothing has to be done in that area for 50 years. They also have programs like that they work with the development community through tax relief and other types of incentives to encourage stuff like that to happen, and they're very successful right now. There's also a new Berwick building that's gone in, seniors care facility. I'm not sure how many rooms are in it, but I would anticipate there's 200 plus. Again, beautiful building downtown County River. There's also a new Comfort Inn going in as well. All new construction downtown County River, and all first class.
Okay. Nothing to report from my side, Councillor Coulson.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Neary.
Thank you. So I also attended the Foothills Open House. I thought it was quite well done. There was a encouragingly high turnout. They had lots of staff on hand to answer questions, and they seemed to be wanting to look to take care of people's concerns. A number of the people I talked to or who approached me, were all, I don't know if it was just the time I got there or whatnot, but they weren't enthusiastic about the process or about the project. So clearly there's some work, I think, that has to be done to bring some segments of the community on board if the community wants to proceed with the Foothills. And one other point is that tonight is my last council meeting. I will be resigned effective the end of this council report. However, given that I was supported very strongly in the last election, which was not that long ago, I feel it contingent on the responsible thing to do to let the community know why I'm choosing to resign at this point. So I just want to let you know that this decision I've made after very considerable thought and with the deepest regret, but I do make it in fine conscience. The current council does not seem equipped to credibly and effectively deal with the community's business. Conditions on the council prevent me from properly representing constituent interests and addressing issues facing the community. Now, municipal councils here in Canada are intended to function as a group of equals, with the mayor acting as first among equals, whose primary duty is to ensure open and unhindered discussion, resulting in honest dealing on issues using established and fair processes and procedures. This council does not work in such fashion. Established procedures and rules are ignored, resulting in lack of fairness and lack of fair dealing. Furthermore, council has lost sight of its executive function and is micromanaging district affairs, when it should be more properly focusing on strategic and policy matters. Damage is being done, and there is much being missed with such an approach. Indicative of council's inability to deal seriously with issues is the lack of action with regard to the March 26 memorandum, which outlined staff concerns over treatment by some members of council. After a month, the issue still persists with no concrete action by council to solve it, despite further staff loss. This is costing the district financially in lost productivity and in disruption of business processes. And of course, there's also the human cost in suffering experienced by staff. And the lack of respect for individuals shown here and lack of fair dealing in this matter is not consistent with Canadian values. There's values here that come from somewhere else, and the Tea Party springs fairly readily to mind. The diversions and obfuscation witnessed in dealing with this matter rather than action speaks volume about how council regards the issue. An independent, effective, and loyal public service is essential for the maintenance of democracy. When this is lost, the loss of democracy along with fair, transparent process follows. That our staff, who serve the community so loyally and so professionally, should be so disregarded is repugnant, and I reject it. Over this matter, if nothing else, I would resign in protest and in sympathy, both with Lantzville residents and staff. And finally, I'm truly disturbed at the undermining of democracy that I see here in Lantzville. A glance at history shows us that democratic rights are typically lost in stages. They don't happen at all in one fell swoop. I've outlined some of these events above, and taken with the scenes of angry, red-faced men shouting unrestrained abuse at staff and others that we have witnessed at recent council meetings.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, I'm just about done, and you have no cause to interrupt me.
Mr. Neary.
That's disruptive and uncalled for, and I protest. That we have seen at recent council meetings, and one is reminded of how democracy formerly fell in cultured nations, such as Italy and Germany. In the last election, I was supported by over 40% of voting electors. Only one other council member can say that, and they too have gone.
tells you something about democracy in Lanceville. That I am prevented from representing these citizens in a fair and open council is a reduction of democracy, nothing less. Lanceville Council is broken, and I can therefore best serve the community by leaving rather than by staying, so much as it pains me. I resign.
Okay, next item on the agenda, Fire Chief's 2015 First Quarter Fire Chiefs Report. Chief Woods has put together a report detailing the activities of the fire department for the first quarter of the year. Discussion, move receipt by Councillor Hain, seconded by Councillor Scott. Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Sorry, I had a question.
Sorry, Councillor Colson.
Yeah, so, question through the staff. On page 32, or maybe can I go to the chief? Yeah. Let's hope that a small in-service ceremony could take place at that time. Has there been any plans on such a thing?
With regard to the sign?
No, for the truck, new truck.
Sorry, the truck. There's nothing planned specifically, but it's hoped we can do something in terms of officially putting the vehicle into service. And there's a couple of fire service traditions we might involve, and cake, coffee, whatever. You know, just the opportunity. So.
Okay. Any further?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
So that's something we request through the staff, or are the wheels in motion on that, or?
That's strictly my initiative. I think at this point, we haven't talked to Twyla.
Okay.
Okay. Any further on the motion to receive? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed?
If I could just add one more thing, and that's with regard to none of the above kind of, I'd just note that our fire hall flag will be lowered to half-mast tomorrow in recognition of BC, Port Safe BC's Day of Mourning. Workers killed and injured on the job.
Okay, on that motion to receive, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, draft council confidentiality and conflict policy. Councillor Hain?
Can I move to table this pending the
Is that a
board
motion,
changes?
yes or no?
Yes, please.
Okay, motion to table. Do you second it? Second by Councillor Paulson. All those in favor?
You can't discuss it table.
No, you can't.
No, that's why.
Oh, you want to discuss it first? Do you want me to pull it back?
You can withdraw the motion.
Yeah, well.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Could we discuss first and then look at
Sure.
the table? Obviously, there's a bunch of changes to it, and we are down a few people at the present time, unfortunately. And I guess the question I have, when are we tabling it to, and
Till we get a new CAO. Let's table it to them. Or after a by-election, and then all of council can be here again. Okay. I don't think there's any great urgency, is there?
Okay, if you're going to make a motion to table with a specific date that we need set, not date, but action or whichever.
Yeah, so if we're able to ask questions now, through the staff.
Okay. Are you going to get into detailed questions on it?
we're not looking at discussion it, we're looking at what we're going to do with it. Are we going to proceed with it now, or are we going to hunt it out?
I won't hunt it out, but I do have some questions. So.
Well, which could be addressed a little bit.
Councilor Savage, any thoughts?
No, I think, we spent money on this. We've had a lawyer to provide some input to it. So we've been working on this for a couple of months, I think. I don't see why we can't move forward and adopt this right now.
Councillor Hain?
There's a number of issues. I don't think you want me to go through them all tonight. For example, on page 36, under D, all of a sudden, we've got a section that speaks to, I lost it here now, an apprehended conflict, which is a little bit strong. I'm not really sure how we jumped to that so quick in the process. So there's some real challenges. There's things that have been inserted now that I'm not really sure where they've come from. I'm going back to my notes. I just think we need to take some time and look at this and figure out how we ended up with this now.
Councillor Coulson?
So it's legit for me to ask this question based on that.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I have the same questions. There's a lot of new content in here that wasn't discussed as council last time, and there's unless we can ask questions to the staff on where it came from, who's making the changes. So we need to understand that, because there's some significant new language in here. And
Okay, it's up to council to decide whether to consider it tonight, table it to a specific time, or whichever. Councillor Scott.
As I wasn't here, the portion of the meeting that this was all discussed, that I assume a lot of this stuff had been discussed. But question through the staff: what are the results of these changes? Then I assume it was from the council meeting.
Yes, it goes back to March 9th when council had a list of items that they were questioning and requesting additional detail clarification. That in turn was relayed to legal counsel, and he has then drafted and prepared the changes that you see in front of you now.
So council.
So again, I'd like to table it to the fall. Or just table it. Sorry. I'm not going to put a date on it, just table it.
You can't table it, otherwise it has no. It can't come over.
Well, it sits there in oblivion, sort of a thing. What if you table it until reviewed by the new CAO?
Okay.
I'm just providing a suggestion. So, is that a motion?
Sure.
Seconded? No discussion. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Staff relations and code of conduct update. At the previous meeting, there were discussions about me contacting by email the inspector of municipalities. I had contacted them by phone on the Monday of the meeting, which I believe I mentioned at the meeting. During the week, prior to me being able to construct an email to them, I was given a contact by Michelle Dan, who's Director of Advisory Services, Governance and Structure Branch, for a conference call between Gary Padgett, who's the Deputy Inspector, Michelle Dan, and myself, which we did have a discussion Thursday or Friday. They were looking for additional background. Two specific points. Number one, they were looking at whether or not we were able to maintain our statutory obligations with regards to the required positions, which is the corporate officer as well as director of financial services. And then the second thing had to do with what I previously requested from them, and then or suggested to them, and then also the follow-up from the council meeting on the 20th with regards to identification of a potential facilitator to deal with the issues. In terms of the potential facilitator side, Michelle Dan suggested, and actually Gary followed up with it, that they do have people. They needed a better understanding of what the situation was, and they were expected to get back to me either today or tomorrow with regards to who they've identified as a potential facilitator, etc. Their comments were that they were thinking in terms of somebody independent from out of town. They said they'd had people in the past that have been able to deal with these issues, including development of the terms of reference. They said they were working. They were going to talk more after I had the discussion with them as to who would fit the bill or who's some possibilities that would fit the bill, and get back to us. The other part was attendance, request for attendance, and the comment from Gary Padgett was attendance is not something they normally do. His comment directly was they could be capable with additional notice, but not likely the best way to solve the problem. Their identification of a potential facilitator is the person to solve the solution, and that it's not really their role to get into that level of detail on it. So basically where it is just waiting for the final response with regards to the identification of who those facilitators may be. Like I said, the only other comments were any facilitator, they wanted to make sure that they weren't open-ended commitments, be aware with regards to what their roles could be and what they could possibly do for us. I don't think there was anything else specific that they mentioned. So from that standpoint, it's basically holding until we get the response back from them. But like I said, they did raise the comment about independent from out of town in that regard. Questions? Councillor Scott.
One concern I do have, as was discussed at the last meeting, is how is the appropriate way to deal with this because of all the sensitivities. And I do have concerns when it's just the mayor dealing on his own with these people, because that was what the whole discussion was about. Because we discussed whether it should be the CAO or the mayor. It's finally determined the mayor, but with everybody's involvement, including the CAO. And now we have the mayor just dealing independently, and I do have concerns with that.
Yeah, and at this point, all I've done is just had the discussion with them, generally speaking, with regards to an individual, because they requested the conference call. And then from that standpoint, that's effectively all that's been done at this point, is their possibility. They knew that Gary Paget and Michelle Dan had been following the press side of things. Okay, so they've been seeing the comments in the press and understanding the issue there, which is why I guess Michelle Dan was brought in. I hadn't heard her name before. And she's actually another branch of the provincial government. Councillor Hain?
Well, and in reality, somebody's got to talk to them.
Well, but that's not Councillor Scott's concern. Basically, the idea previously about doing it through email was the ability for documentation so people could understand what was said.
But a lot of people don't want to do that. So I think if we get a list of, if we choose to go that route, a list of facilitators that the ministry recommends, we can look at their qualifications and we can send some emails to the individual facilitators if we choose and get the response as a council. I don't think initial conversations is going to be a big issue.
Keep in mind the role of the inspector is not to appoint.
No, I know, but they give us a list.
Come up with some possibilities. Councillor Scott.
In response to Councillor Haim, I still have a concern because that was an issue that was raised and the motion was very, very specific that all were to be involved so that everybody was fully aware of what was being discussed and how it was being discussed. And that's the issue that I have.
But then just following up, how do we move forward then if they don't want to do it by email?
No. That's not. If I may speak for you, Councillor Scott, that's not the point that Councillor Scott was raising. The part is that the aspect of the discussion that we had at council was related to the email side of things. And like I said, they preempted it with the discussion or the suggestion of the conference call in terms of, which it kind of surprised me because I had never heard the Michelle Dan individual before. So. But what they would suspect that they intend to touch base back through email because that's how Michelle Dan originally made the suggestion of the conference call. So that's where we go from there is then in terms of that, being able to come up with what their comments are. Councillor Scott.
If she got in touch with us by email or with you by email, then why couldn't you email everybody else and include them in that discussion?
With regards to the conference call side?
Conference call or whatever, just in general so that people understood what was happening. And I mean, the motion was very specific as to what was the expectation. I mean, that's where I'm struggling a bit.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of, like I said, it's their suggestion for the conference call between myself, Gary Paget, and Michelle Dan. So basically, I just took the conference call when they suggested it. Okay, Councillor Coulson.
May I ask Councillor Scott if he's got any recommendations to ease his concern in this regard?
Well, I think it's already taken place, but the concern is that we're trying to keep transparency and we aren't doing a very good job at it. And that was the issue that council had, was transparency. It's not transparent if just one person is dealing with the issue. Mm-hmm. And that was the direction that council gave. Mm-hmm. And the direction the council gave was not be involved.
counter that a little bit because the
No,
initial
it's-
contact
the-
was by
the-
email.
Hang on,
Yep.
the motion
Yes.
itself
I
does
read
say.
It's clear.
The motion right here, contact them by email, which was done. It then diverted from there. So
No, it
it's-
didn't.
No, hang on. Just in terms of the order of things, Councillor Scott is correct, because what they did is they contacted me as a result of a telephone call that I had made on the Monday prior to the council meeting in terms of it. So they basically stepped in with the Michelle Van side of things.
To read the motion is very clear. Councillor Hain moved, Councillor Coulson seconded. The Mayor Hain be directed to contact Mr. Gary Padgett via email with a copy to all members of council and the CAO, requesting the Inspector of Municipalities Office assist the district in identifying a suitable candidate to undertake the items identified in the following motions of council. It was deemed that we had discussions about the CAO as well. It was deemed that because of the issue and the sensitivities of it, that everybody needed to be involved for transparency's sake. It was clear.
One other interesting thing of note is they did mention a number of other calls that they had received as well. Gary Padgett mentioned that. I don't believe Michelle Dan mentioned that as well. So
calls from
people here in Lanceville in terms of
council members or
both. So they didn't give me a timing on when those calls were, but it was not something that Mr. Padgett had mentioned previously. So. Any further on that?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
One
Councilor
more.
Coulson.
Was there any discussion on our potential challenges with maintaining quorum, recognizing that it's changed in the last 8 hours?
Yeah. That in itself, in terms of the quorum side, there were some brief discussions revolving around concerns with the letter to the residents, but it was something that they still hadn't kind of thought through in that respect. At that time, of course, they were aware of the recent events.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. There is some provision, I don't know which act it is, but quorum in general, but there's some other comments about quorum and who to contact in one of the acts of them, but I haven't looked at it for detail. Any further? Okay, next on to bylaws number 8A, with regards to the third reading of the financial plan bylaw.
So moved.
Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Savage. Discussion? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Tax rates bylaw, first reading.
So moved.
Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Savage. Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Second reading of tax rates bylaw. Moved by Councillor Savage, seconded by Councillor Scott. Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Third reading.
Excuse me. I don't think we can count on that. Look to me is, could we just have a revote?
Sure. On the second reading?
Yes, please.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Third reading?
Actually, Peter, recorded vote on this.
On which one?
Third reading.
Sure. Okay. Third reading. Councillor Scott, seconded by Councillor Savage. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Councillor Savage, Councillor Scott, Mayor Haim opposed. Councillor Haim and Councillor Coulson. Motion carried. Gets us to number 9A, the financial statements. Approval of the financial statements is presented by KPMG earlier this evening. Thank you, Councillor Scott.
I move the financial statements. Yes, sir.
As presented?
Presented.
Okay. Councillor Scott, seconded by Mayor Haim. Discussion? Hearing none? This is financial statements.
So just that report that they ran through.
Well, no, there's the detailed financial
Oh,
statements.
okay.
On pages 101 to 122 of your agenda.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Okay. Discussion on it?
There was more probably a misunderstanding of
Actually, the only thing I noticed was just a spelling thing
Oh, yeah.
on the reserves.
Yeah, treaty
I think it should say treaty,
Yeah,
treaty negotiation.
page 114.
Treaty, not a major number thing. Okay, any further discussion on the financial statements? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. 2015 water replacement project tender results. Let's put together a report regarding the tender. We did have an adjustment to the projected financial plan in the previous meeting. It took into account the increase in that from 250 to 265. So what we're looking for is the awarding of the contract to IWC Excavation Ltd. Oh, sorry, Councillor Savage?
Yeah, so I move that council award the contract for the 2015 water main replacement project on Fillmore Road to IWC Excavating Limited in the amount of $241,507.27, including GST.
Second for that? Councillor Scott, discussion? Councillor Hain.
I have a question for the staff. Is it, maybe it's not, I've been asked by residents further down on Fernmont, is there any way that we could extend that so we could put hydrants down there, or is that possible?
That wasn't the plan, no. It's basically replacing what was existing, so we'll stop just past Clark.
Just past Clark? Oh, okay.
Further discussion? Councillor Colson.
Sorry, through to Fred. The days to complete, there's quite a spread there. Just curious, rough rationale for that, from 30 to 90.
We looked at that and we can't figure that one out either.
Okay.
Basically, it's just manpower. They're trying to spread around the manpower to do things.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Notice of motion, Councillor Colson. Not a notice of motion, it's actually the motion itself.
Yeah, I move that Works APC be contacted to investigate the district of Landsfield's adherence to its bullying and harassment policies.
Second by Councillor Hain. Discussion. Councillor Colson?
Yeah, I spoke to it last time. Yeah, I think this is an important step in getting some resolution to the concerns around this. Works APC is ultimately in place to ensure that we abide by the rule of law and how we conduct our business. As a result of WorkSafe BC guidance practices, we have policies in place to make sure we follow it. So I think it's time for them to have a review of how we've adhered to those in light of our recent incidents.
Councillor Hain?
Yeah, I'm going to support this because one, it is the law, technically. We do have a policy and they should be brought in. And two, this could be a cost-effective way of dealing with this issue for us. They're an independent body, they can come in, they do a thorough investigation of all alleged incidents of harassment and bullying. So to me, this is a way to go. It could possibly save us tens of thousands of dollars. So I definitely support this. And I would like a recorded vote, please.
Okay. Councillor Scott.
I struggle with this one a little bit because we are bringing a facilitator in. We were discussing earlier in the agenda bringing a facilitator in to deal with this. So this is another way of dealing with, I guess, the same thing. We don't have any formal bullying and harassment claims against the district, either from our unionized staff or from our management staff. So at this point, I don't know if it's a WorkSafe issue because all we've had is concerns raised and nobody has invoked an actual, has not invoked any of our policies or any of the union policies to file a grievance regarding workplace bullying and harassment. So the way I see it is we've been put on notice by both, I guess, unionized staff with management staff and then management staff with council. But we've not received a formal complaint as per our policies. So that's where I struggle with this a little bit, and the WorkSafe process from talking to others can be a fairly lengthy process, sometimes over a year. So I would like to see us proceed with our existing process of the facilitator and get that dealt with. If that's still not satisfactory, then we can move on to this process.
Councillor Savage?
Yeah, I'll be supporting this. I don't see any harm in doing this. We have an obligation by law to ensure a safe workspace, and part of this investigation, if we want to call it that, we'll probably include a review of that correspondence that we've received in terms of whether there's any substance to them or not. So I can't see any harm in not doing this.
Councillor Hain?
Well, now, after Councillor Scott's comments, I personally can't see how we cannot do this, given that if we have no real formal allegations of harassment and bullying, how could we be thinking about spending $20,000 to hire a facilitator, and then look at hiring a facilitator for maybe $100,000 when we don't even know if there is a claim? Like, why wouldn't we do this first? Because if this flushes out that there is no incidents, we could save this community thousands and thousands of dollars and a lot of grief. So why wouldn't we want to do this first? Isn't this the logical thing to do first? It's free. Other than our premiums, sorry.
But I think it's fair to make sure that there is a clear distinction between the WorkSafe BC and facilitation that we're talking about. There's a clear distinction, and there's no direct relationship in my mind.
Well, just sorry to follow up, I'm just not really sure what it is we would be facilitating that. That's where I struggle. Like, what are we getting them to look at if there is nothing? So that's where I think everybody is struggling. It's all alleged, there's nothing real.
Okay. Let's stick to the motion. Yeah. Councillor Scott.
I think, again, that there is issues that haven't been formally put through the formal processes. I think we have issues. I think we have issues at the council table, and we have issues with staff-council relationships that we need to bring somebody in. Obviously, we've had 2 councillors resign. That doesn't happen very often, especially 5 months after an election. So obviously, there's issues that need to be dealt with. As I say, I look at this as a separate issue. I agree with Councillor Savage was saying that this is something I look at somewhat separately than the other process we're going through. Our council wants to go that way, and so we think.
From my standpoint, a couple things. As Councillor Scott has raised, no formal complaints, although you certainly wouldn't know it by statements in the papers and letters going out to residents and resignation statements in that regard. From my standpoint, when it comes to WorkSafe BC, it's at least us being proactive in regards to it. It's not the all-encompassing. I agree in that respect. But at least we're being proactive with regards to contacting them, even though there may not be any formal complaints per se. Like I said, when it comes to it, the fact that there are no formal complaints and all there is vague allegations, I find more frustrating than anything else. But I think this is something that at least deals with a piece of the overall issue, not the complete issue. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, yes, for a recorded vote?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor? Councillor Savage, Councillor Hain, Councillor Scott, Mayor Hayman, Councillor Colson, motion carried. Which gets us to public participation. Mr. Howell.
Three items, two pretty straightforward. One to Councillor Savage. You mentioned a permanent annual run around Westwood Lake is anticipated over Westwood. What sort of numbers? So many numbers
It's a proposal right now.
Yeah.
They're talking about 300 participants, and I don't understand this triathlon stuff, but there are 3. Anybody knows anymore? There are 3 different categories. So
I was just concerned if you were.
The guy like me would take 3 days to go.
My concern was about the damage to the trail.
Yeah, that's all.
If the numbers were.
That's all be taken care of. The city, once they enter into agreements for things like this, they enter into an agreement and in terms of costs and policing and all that kind of stuff.
I think the idea is great.
Traffic control and,
And Mayor Haig, you mentioned about fires on the beach earlier to the RCMP, and pallets on the beach, and pallets filled with hardware. For example, nails, we have children and they're needed there for the people. So that is a major concern, that people are bringing wood on the beach in that regard. And then my third issue is, I didn't see a line item in the budget to handle the expense or anticipated expense of your last issue you just talked about. And having seen previous councils go down this trail with another major issue which absorbed the council and staff's time, took away from managing our community, there's a cost associated with it all. So I am requesting tonight that you review back from when this issue started in March, I believe, and try and guesstimate the man hours that is being given by staff and council and others, because at the end of that we can guesstimate what it's cost to this community. It's not looking good.
Just a couple comments. The triathlon one is the BC Summer Games that were held here. The triathlon was part of that as well, and I was running at Westwood Lake the day that they held that. And really well organized, very little impact. I went through the next day too, and I don't know how many runners they had, swimmers and bikers that they had there, but it's quite slick on how they set it up, so I suspect that's where it's come from, is their experience in that was quite positive.
Okay, very good.
With regards to the pallet side, like I said, I believe I know where the pallets are coming from, and part of that has to do with kind of historical children who had mentioned where they came from in their day, sort of thing. So there's certainly something we'll look at trying to control their ability to get fuel for the fire.
Safety.
Further public participation. Brent.
I'm just wanting to comment on the idea that the BC Workplace and the facilitator might cancel one or the other out. I've had extensive training in this kind of thing in my management experience, and I know that we all have a different level of sensitivity to how we're treated. So some of us may not realize that in approaching a person in a particular way is abusive to them or harassing them or whatever. The Workplace BC is more of an investigation, but the facilitation is more of a process of exploring people at where they're at their level and then moving to a more acceptable way of communicating. So the two should go concurrently, so that when Workplace BC has finished their investigation, you've got some skills and some background and some understanding for this kind of thing not to happen again. And we all relate in very different ways. We're all raised very differently, we come from different cultures, and for some people, they're more sensitive to the information they receive than others. And so I would urge you to do it together and pursue the two lines of resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further public participation. Mr. Dempsey.
Brian Dempsey, 6931 Road. A couple of observations, or one observation. During the election, that side of the table got cleared out. If you had one more quit now from that side, it'd probably be a perfect score.
Sorry, John.
Back in the very first council, in a strategic planning session, we had Gord McIntosh speak to the very first council. If this council would follow his recommendations, I think a lot of this problem would never have existed. We'd probably save a lot of money. His statement basically is that drew a little diagram on the wall. Councillors here, narrow, and then staff below. The statement was council should not go below the line. And as long as council keeps going below the line, no mediator is going to make any difference, in my opinion. The annual audit tonight was approved by council, and I'm not sure all councillors voted in favor. I don't know why. But the auditor did give credit to the staff and council, but I want to point out that was the 2014 council that was given the credit for that, not the 2015. Now, tonight, you move forward on the budget with the 2% increase. Again, people voted opposed to it, no reason for it, so I don't know how you can debate anything when people vote opposed and you don't know why. But what I did hear, that there was no deficit, there was no out-of-control spending. We heard that in the audit. So I don't think residents are ever going to know the real truth. There's some people out there who still believe in the lies that were told up until the last election. An observation, Lanceville are latest spending $10 million on their water system, Parksville $24 million on their water supply. Neither one of them is really going to give them much more than clean water. And I think that when I hear about the Foothills drilling for water, I think the $10 million and $24 million makes Nanaimo water look like a real bargain. But I'm kind of feeling sorry for those people that were expecting the mayor to get a better deal with the water agreement. So, in my opinion, I think this council is doomed. And I don't say that we're going to see anything happen positive. Forget about the goals of the OCP. And I know the community will be looking forward to all the money council will be saving for the next few months with the hiring of consultants and senior staff replacements. And again, tonight I say there's another in-camera meeting. I don't know who the tweet was that said that shouldn't have in-camera meetings, but you've had one every meeting, so you're carrying right on there, perfect, man. Okay.
Further participation? Yes.
Hilda Higgs on Dickinson Road. Well, to come here tonight, I have to say what, the press has been talking about and what is that now, and to say I'm appalled, is putting it mildly. I've been living here for 25 years. I've been very proud of most of our councillors, and I still am proud of two that have just left. They did garner most of the votes, and that's telling me a lot. I feel if we're going to the polls, if we have to go for a by-election, let's have a whole new election. I think there were falsehood spread, and obviously it's new council. We've had councils. The other one had a water deal in place. That's gone by the wayside. Everything that I wanted, they were attaining for us, and now it's obvious when you come and remember these two garnered most of the votes. And now what are we going to have in their place? The bullying has obviously gone on. It doesn't take a counselor to realize that, or a facilitator or anything else. When two have resigned from staff and others aren't happy, not that they're even my favorite staff, not that, even if the councillors that step down, but when 7 people can't get together and put their differences aside, I think it's appalling. And to call yourself a mayor and to allow all this to go on, I find it absolutely appalling. I think that people should be given another vote. I don't think you can function, and I don't understand that. Did you not come from a big enough family that you realize everyone has differences? I'm just absolutely appalled.
With regards to your statements about bullying and things like that, I invite you to watch the recorded meetings and how each of those meetings were handled. And with respect to some of Councillor Negrave's statements, I'll deal with those separately.
I want a copy of this letter because I just...
Keep in mind that it's something written on paper and not necessarily reflective of what actually went.
I would love to watch the
by all means.
meetings.
And they've been recorded, I believe, back to the first or second week of February. So you can see all of the committee of the whole meetings and regular council meetings on YouTube.
Yeah. Further public participation. Chief Webbs.
I just want to say, after a full year of negotiating and working with others, that sign project at the hall is winding up Wednesday. And there will be 2 Sea-Doo classes there planting and digging, and there will be the NDSS construction class there too, and as well as their instructors, and Sherry Martin from Seaview, and I believe some school district representatives as well. So I just put that out. The firefighters are buying pizza for that crew, and I think it should culminate by, although you see nothing on the grounds right now, but a bare spot. I understand Nanaimo Timber Works is putting up the structure tomorrow, and the classes are coming out on Wednesday. So,
What time's that at?
the classes are going to start arriving, I think, from Seaview about 10, and not sure when the ND crew is there, but. Just see how it goes. The soil's arriving tomorrow, and so hopefully it'll look like something. The new fire and water regs sign won't be ready, but it will be going on the structure as soon as it is for this fire season and water restriction season.
Thank you, Tom. Any additional? Ms. Wiley?
This way, just to say, thank you, Tom, for telling me what the sign was going to be. I've been fascinated looking at that, the structure. I wondered if you were going to say, this is Lansville Firewall.
It's a little different, but we do hope maybe further projects just for the public, because you may not know, but we hope to light it, and although I'm not cool on digital signs, there has been talk of that. But more to my thinking, I'd like to see a second project go ahead with the school district in terms of a wall. They suggested a curved wall, maybe further up the property with highways permission, with our logo in it and 3 flagpoles.
Oh, okay. Okay. Any additional participation? Okay. Hearing none.
How do we get the chief to stay?
Is there a response, Tom? Tom, is there a response? Like, ask Joanne, or?
I know it's time, I'm afraid you're
going to miss you.
Well, I'll miss a lot of aspects of the job that I really enjoyed, but you know what, it drags me out, and I'm more than ready to go or play a role that maybe can see some of these projects like I just mentioned through and take it off the back of somebody else in charge.
So you're not leaving us?
You know, I'll tell you one thing. It's this. If whoever you may put in place, if they don't, fire service doesn't recognize members with beards, and if I can't keep my beard, I probably can't stay on. So,
I have to say, wrong keeping the job.
Further participation.
Yeah, glad to have a smile and a bit of a laugh.
Okay, motion.
Move the council to approve the meeting of public pursuant to section 91A and C considering the person who holds or may consider the position of an officer, employee, or agent of his officer, another position appointed by municipality, and labor relations with other employees.
Moved by Councilor Scott, seconded by Councilor Coulson. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.